Madagascar3.exe. This story was written by James Rolfe, September 11, 2001. Since I could remember, I loved Madagascar. It had been one of my favorite franchises since I was a kid, being the first movie I saw in theaters and all. I'd seen all the movies, bought the DVDs, bought the shirts and the posters, and even the first two movies' video game adaptations. Although my family had always been sort of poor and not very wealthy, so I never really got the chance to buy too much, but if I saw something that was cheap enough, I would certainly go out of my way to buy it. One day my rich Aunt Gloria, who funnily enough shares the name with the hippo in the franchise that I love so dearly, was killed when a lawnmower fell on her head. Basically, it was sitting on the top shelf in our shed, and the shelf happened to snap, and it had fallen on her head, killing her. In her will, she had left but one thing, $100 toward each member of her family. That included me. I didn't know what I was going to buy. It seemed like weeks went by and I still had no clue. Then it hit me. There was one key thing missing in my collection. The Madagascar 3 video game for the Nintendo Wii, which was the only console I owned at the time. So I walked up to my EB Games and I asked for the game. They said they didn't have any new sealed copies, but they did have one pre-owned one. So I bought the game, went home and popped it in my Wii. Right away something was off. For some reason, what seemed like the black of Marty's stripes was a weird shade of red. I didn't really think of it too much due to the fact my TV was so old and pretty bad, so I thought the color saturation was just seemingly off. I didn't really care, so then I, of course, pressed the start button and I began to play the game. There was 3 different characters you could pick from: Alex, Gloria, and Melman. Marty wasn't there, which confused me considering he was a big part of the series and, of course, my favorite character, so I was a little bit disappointed. And I also noticed there was 2 other locked characters. They were silhouettes, but I could still make out who they were. It was King Julian, and also Mort, the tiny squirrel. So I said, whatever, and I began to play the game. I began on Alex. It started with Alex, running through the jungle. It was the scene from the first movie, where everyone looks like steaks, and he tries to eat them. Except for, it was a mini-game, and you had to pick out how many steaks you could eat in 50 seconds. So, I racked up some points, and when it was over, the people turned back into lemurs, and they weren't steaks anymore. Like in the movie, the dream was over. Except for, in this version, their blood and guts was all over the place. All over Alex, there's blood and organs. It was terrifying. I wasn't quite sure how they got away with this considering it was a kid's game, but then I realized that they can probably do more in video games rather than movies, so I didn't really care too much. Then another level started. It was of course for Alex still, but you had to chase down your friends, since they were running in fear from you. It was a bit dark, but I said whatever and began to run. No matter what, you could not catch up to them. You just kept running and running and running throughout the jungle, with no way to get to them. I felt like I was running for hours, until finally Alex just started scampering down, and he tripped over a log. He hit his face in the dirt and started crying. His friends were in the dust now, and he could not see any of them. It began to rain. Alex turned towards the camera and said in his best Ben Stiller impression, "What do I look like? A joke?" Then he took one of his claws and made it as sharp as possible. He put his wrist up to the screen and slit his wrist, and blood squirted all over the place. It was terrifying. There was a scream of agony. Then the screen cut to black and said, "Try again." I was a little freaked out, but didn't really care considering Ben Stiller had been in a few R-rated movies, so I figured this wasn't too weird to him, so it wouldn't be too weird for me. Then I began to play the Gloria level.